Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a detailed timeline of the Jantar Mantar protests. Our source material gives a highly critical, step-by-step account of the state's response to these demonstrations, and we're going to neutrally unpack exactly what allegedly went down right in the heart of Delhi. We'll be focusing heavily on the chaotic events surrounding July 20th to really understand the mechanics of what unfolded. And just a quick reminder up front, everything we're discussing today is drawn straight from the allegations presented in these sources.
All right, let's just jump right into a moment of extreme tension. Picture this. It's 4:40 a.m. on July 20th, and protesters make a totally unexpected discovery in the dark. Tensions were already incredibly high after roughly 20 days of what demonstrators described as a completely non-violent sit-in. But under the cover of night, the situation took a really sharp turn. The source details how unpermitted, banged-up cars and a literal truckload of bricks just mysteriously showed up overnight. The really crucial context you need to know here is that these vehicles appeared in areas completely blocked off by the police from all sides. Since no vehicles were supposedly allowed in without explicit police permission, protesters immediately flagged this. They claimed this was planted evidence set up intentionally to incite violence and completely discredit their peaceful movement. Section 1. Origins of the protest, the build-up to July 20th. So how on earth did we get to that crazy early morning standoff? Well, we've got to rewind a bit. The protest actually started out peacefully on June 20th, with groups demanding the education minister's resignation over medical seat allocations. Things ramped up on June 28th, when activist Sonam Wangchuk started an indefinite hunger strike. Then, out of nowhere, came a massive administrative pivot on July 17th, the sudden removal of Delhi Police Commissioner Satish Golcha. Speculation from the sources suggests his sudden removal, right before he was expected to retire, was tied directly to him allowing the peaceful protest to continue without any interference. And that administrative shakeup, it was quickly followed by direct action. Early on July 18th, when the crowds were at their thinnest, security forces reportedly moved in and removed Wangchuk from the protest stage. The source claims he was forced into an ambulance and taken to Safdarjung Hospital. Removing such a highly visible figure really set the stage for the massive state interventions that hit the very next night. Section 2. Dismantling the security, the night of July 19th. Now here's where the source highlights a truly bizarre shift in tactics. On the evening before a massive planned march, official crowd control changed completely. For a protest where thousands of extra people were expected, heightened security is just the natural expectation, right? Instead, reports claim that Delhi police actually removed all the metal detectors and security checks at Jantar Mantar. Protesters documented this openly, arguing it was a premeditated move to allow unrestricted access and basically create an environment ripe for chaos the next day. But at the exact same time they were taking down those individual detectors, the police allegedly brought down the hammer legally. They invoked Section 163 of the BNSS Code, which is a regulation restricting the assembly of more than 5 people. On top of that, authorities reportedly threw up these massive 10-foot-high welded barricades. It's an incredibly striking contradiction. The source suggests they removed individual security checks while simultaneously throwing up huge physical and legal walls to deter the marchers. Section 3. The July 20th crackdown, escalation and chaos. As the sun came up on the 20th, things allegedly went from tense to full-on chaos. To prevent communication and stop on-the-ground footage from spreading, the government reportedly installed jammers and entirely shut down the internet across 150 different sites in central Delhi. According to the source, this massive digital blackout was designed to completely isolate the protesters and keep the rest of the country in the dark about what was unfolding. And it wasn't just digital blackouts. Physical movement was totally bottlenecked too. At 9 a.m., 5 key metro stations right on the march route, including major hubs like Janpath and Rajiv Chowk, were completely shut down. This essentially trapped a huge crowd of students inside the stations. As you can imagine, frustration boiled over, and the crowds eventually broke right through the barriers to continue their march toward the protest site despite the lockdowns. Which brings us to a seriously alarming number. As the crowds marched toward Parliament, the source claims police launched unprovoked baton charges and fired at least 25 tear gas shells at peaceful protesters. The reports even note that footage showed tear gas being thrown at people who were literally just sitting on the ground, painting a picture of an overwhelming and totally disproportionate use of force. The source's claims about police conduct get even more disturbing here. Reports state that authorities deliberately hid their identities by removing their nameplates, obscuring vehicle number plates, and covering their faces,
with some even operating in everyday civilian clothing. Plus, independent on-ground reporters like Shamira Singh, Sarthak Goswami, and Ramit Verma were allegedly targeted and assaulted while they were just trying to document the chaos. But get this, while all this was unfolding on the streets, there was allegedly a massive distraction happening behind the scenes. Protest leaders were called into meetings and promised an audience with Health Minister J.P. Nadda. But instead of a productive dialogue, they were allegedly kept waiting for 2 hours, only to be given a super brief 10-minute non-committal chat. The argument here is that this was a strategic distraction, intentionally keeping leaders busy to leave the crowds leaderless during the absolute height of the crackdown.
Section 4. The nationwide ripple effect. Beyond Jantar Mantar.
The authorities might have managed to clear the Jantar Mantar stage by 3 p.m., but the outrage? That definitely wasn't contained to just Delhi. This heavy-handed approach allegedly sparked a massive democratic backlash nationwide. We're talking students facing arrest in Lucknow, detentions in Ahmedabad, and thousands marching in solidarity as far away as Arunachal Pradesh. It seems the attempt to suppress the movement in the capital actually amplified citizen voices, triggering a huge wave of solidarity protests across the country. And talk about resilience, the source notes that despite the tear gas, the batons, and their entire physical setup being completely dismantled, the demonstrators still returned. By the evening of July 20th, protesters had marched right back to Jantar Mantar and literally rebuilt their dismantled stage, showing a steadfast refusal to back down. So as we wrap up this explainer, the incredibly turbulent timeline laid out by our source leaves us with a massive, thought-provoking question. Based on these intense allegations of suppressed marches, internet blackouts, planted evidence, and questionable police tactics, how do we properly balance state security with the fundamental right to protest in a democracy? It's absolutely a critical question for the future of democratic expression. Thanks for unpacking this timeline with me today. Keep learning, and definitely keep asking the big questions.